What you don't know about sourdough could make you a victim of clever marketing and could lead to negative, unexpected side effects like bloating, unstable blood sugar levels, and weight gain. But on that same note, there are still potential perks if you do it the right way. Today, I'm sharing what you need to know about sourdough so that you can use it the right way to support your body and your wellness goals. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's nutrition human performance. On my channel, I share the science-backed and delicious information to help you achieve your weight loss and wellness dreams. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. Today's video is also sponsored by Element, but more on them in a bit. Okay, so what makes sourdough so special? And is it even that special? Now, sourdough isn't your average loaf of bread that you would find at the grocery store. Regular bread is made with fast-acting yeast that can cause the bread to rise in just a few hours. This yeast has been isolated, harvested, and processed to help people cut down on how long it takes to ferment and make bread. Sourdough doesn't actually use yeast, or at least not really. Instead, it uses something called a starter to ferment the bread. That starter is made from flour and water and natural bacteria and yeast that are found in the flour and in the air. This more natural, slower fermentation process takes anywhere between 8 to 48 hours. It's because of this slower fermentation that you get that classic sour, tangy taste of sourdough. Regular store-bought bread is usually only fermented for about 2 to 3 hours, so it doesn't get that same tangy flavor. But here's where it gets interesting for your health. During that slow fermentation process with sourdough, the wild yeast and bacteria help to break down the starches and even gluten that's in the flour. This is why sourdough can tend to be easier to digest for those who are a little sensitive to gluten. Plus, this slower fermentation time can also lower the glycemic load, which means it's not going to have as big of an impact on your blood sugar levels and therefore be more supportive of a blood sugar stabilizing goal. And when your blood sugar levels are more stable, it can help to reduce hunger and reduce sugar cravings that could otherwise work against your weight loss or wellness goals. But there is a really big catch because not all sourdough is created equal. If you're to go to the grocery store and just buy a regular old sourdough loaf, it could not actually be sourdough at all. It could be a total imposter. You could and likely are buying sourdough that has not gone through that slow fermentation time and has actually had vinegar or sourdough flavoring added in to mimic that same sour flavor. That means you're not going to be getting those same digestibility benefits or blood sugar stabilizing benefits as the real sourdough. And I'm going to share with you how to spot the real deal in just a second. But before we do that, I want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Element. You guys know I've been using Element electrolytes for about 4 years now. Element is my all-time favorite electrolyte company. They contain the sodium, magnesium, and potassium to help balance electrolyte levels, all without having any sugar and tasting so dang good. As a nutritionist, I know how important electrolytes are for my overall health and energy levels and workout performance. And in the past, I would just take salt. And honestly, I was so inconsistent with that because it doesn't taste good to just have salty water. But Element makes it so easy to get the benefits of electrolytes because it tastes so good. And I never forget to take it because I look forward to taking it. My all-time favorite flavor has always been their grapefruit salt. It's so refreshing, so delicious, but they also have a ton of other amazing flavors too, like the raspberry, citrus, and orange. And you can get a free 8-count sample pack of Element's most popular drink mix flavors with any purchase at drinkelement.com/autumn. Find your favorite Element flavor or share it with a friend. This is only available through my link, so make sure to check out drinklmnt.com/autumn. The link is also in the description down below. Okay, so there are 3 main reasons why sourdough could be considered healthy. The first is that it's more nourishing than just regular bread. The slow fermentation process helps to break down anti-nutrients that are naturally found in grains like phytates. If those phytates were left behind, then they actually block your body's ability to absorb the minerals that are within certain grains like wheat. That includes important minerals like iron, zinc, and magnesium. But because the sourdough process helps to break down that phytic acid, it also makes it so that your body can then gain access to those very important minerals. On the other hand, regular bread tends to have higher levels of phytic acid because it has not gone through this slower fermentation time and therefore can have more of those anti-nutrient effects. Second reason is that it's easier to digest. True sourdough typically has less gluten than just regular store-bought bread. This could make it easier to digest, especially if you are a little bit sensitive to gluten, and is often the reason why people feel less sluggish after they have regular sourdough versus just regular bread. The third is that it can be a low glycemic load carb, but this does depend on the amount you use. That same slow fermentation process helps to lower lower the glycemic load and make the bread more blood sugar stabilizing, especially if you are active and you are working toward a fitness goal and you need a little bit more carbohydrate in order to refuel your muscles. Having something like sourdough could be a much more blood sugar stabilizing option to refuel your muscles versus something like white rice. Even during my fat loss journey, I personally have been having one slice of sourdough every day, and I make sure to pair it with other blood sugar stabilizing foods like my scrambled eggs. But I'm also quite active and I do strength train and I walk a lot, so my body is able to tolerate and use that little bit of extra carbohydrate to fuel my muscles. Now on the flip side, sourdough is absolutely not a saint, and there are three main downsides and things that you need to consider. The first is that it is a processed flour. Most real sourdough, even the sourdough that you're making at home, uses the same processed bread flour. This flour is often stripped of the things that actually make it beneficial, like the fiber and the micronutrients, which can make it essentially more of just like a brick of carbohydrates. Now, the solution would be to use a truly whole wheat or whole grain sourdough, although this is pretty tricky to find because it is going to be a lot more dense. The second reason is that it's still pretty high carbohydrate. No matter how you slice it, bread joke, sourdough is still made from flour. And even if it is whole grain, it's still a grain that has been ground up. It requires less chewing than the truly whole grain, and therefore it still can be a lot easier to eat a lot more than you had originally intended. Now, if you are quite active, if you're strength training, those extra carbohydrates could be used for the muscles post-workout. But if you're not very active or if you are insulin resistant, you likely won't be able to tolerate that higher amount of carbohydrate, even if it's coming from something like a whole grain sourdough. In that case, you're probably better off getting your carbohydrate source from something that is higher in fiber, like black beans or lentils. Okay, and the third reason is that sourdough is just simply not a superfood. Sure, it is a lot better than regular bread. It's more digestible, it's more blood sugar stabilizing, but it's still really low in satiating protein, and it doesn't really have as much of the minerals and micronutrients that you might get from other foods. It's better than processed breads that you usually find in the grocery store, but it's still not highly nutritious, which is especially something to factor in if you are on a fat loss journey. Now, if you do choose to have sourdough and if it's going to work with your wellness goals, then here's how you can actually spot the real deal. The first thing you need to do is look at the ingredients. A quick way to figure out if it's real is to look for yeast in the ingredients. Real sourdough doesn't use yeast, so it shouldn't have it in the ingredients list. If you see yeast, then it's probably a fake sourdough. The second is to opt for whole grain. These will have at least a little bit more fiber and nutrients than the regular white flour sourdough, so look for options like whole wheat, rye, or einkorn. The third is more of a hack, and it's to buy from a local baker or a farmer's market. It's pretty hard to find real sourdough at the grocery store, although I was shocked to find that there were a few at my local health food store. But it's even harder to find a sourdough that uses whole grains. You can usually have an easier time finding a whole grain sourdough at your local bakery, where that's something that they actually specialize in, or at a farmer's market. You can also make it yourself, but sourdough is quite the passion project and does take a lot of time. And it's not necessarily for everyone, although it can be really fun. Okay, the fourth thing to do is to weigh the slices. Now, normally I'm not an advocate for like weighing and tracking, but because sourdough is usually purchased as a complete loaf and it's not pre-sliced for you, and it's a food that is still quite easy to overeat, it's a good idea to weigh out the slices that you are slicing yourself, especially because the loaves can be quite large. Now, a good range is to make a slice that's about 30 to 40 grams by weight. This will keep the net carbs below 20 so that the sourdough can complement the meal rather than just piling on a lot of processed carbs. Now, I eat sourdough pretty much every day, even on my postpartum fat loss journey, but it's because I balance out the sourdough with other nutrient-dense, high-quality protein, fat, and fiber-rich foods that it works for my body. So if you want to get an idea of what those other foods are that can really help support a fat loss journey, then you can check out my recent high-protein grocery haul with this video next. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.